Hey, I'm Chef Plum with PlumLoveFoods.com, and this is how you make Sloppy Joe from scratch. All right, so to start our Sloppy Joe, it's really simple. The first thing we have to do is cut up a red bell pepper. Now, when you cut the pepper, the quickest way to do it that I find is to go around the sides, just like this. Once you get it cut, put it to the side. Don't be cheap. Take out the gills in the middle. The ribs, excuse me. They don't taste good. No one wants to taste that. No one wants to taste these. So we take them right out just like this. You see the white part, you cut it out. Pretty simple. So we take them, move your trash to the side, put your peppers together, and we're just going to rough dice it up. Now don't cut your finger off because it's a red bell pepper and you'd never know where your finger went because it would all be red. Put them all together, just rough dice it, just like this. It's very important you throw it off your cutting board too. It's an extremely important thing to do. So once we got the pepper cut, we're going to put it over here onto our plate. I like to have everything done ahead of time and ready to go before I start doing any actual cooking. Makes life a lot easier. When you dice an onion, one of the simplest things to do is run your knife to the side like this a couple of times, just like this, then come down, just like this. Now we're going to use almost half an onion. Ends up being roughly about a cup. Maybe at 3/4 of a cup. Just like that. Now after I cut it, put it all together. I usually run my knife through it a couple more times just to make sure. There we go. And we'll put this right on top of our peppers as well. All right, so one of the things to remember when you make Sloppy Joe, it's basically barbecued beef is the best way to think about it. And when I like to do it, I use a mixture of ground pork and ground beef. It's 80% lean, 20% fat. You can get this pretty much any grocery store. They call it meatball mix. Sometimes they call it meatloaf mix. Just using the ground beef is fine. However, when you mix it up, pork tastes good. Who doesn't like pork? So we're going to make our sauce now for our Sloppy Joe. Now basically a sauce for a Sloppy Joe is essentially a barbecue sauce. I like to make mine a little sweet and spicy, so the best way to start that is about a cup of ketchup right into a separate bowl. Now you're going to mix all these things together at the same time. It doesn't matter. You don't have to put the dry in first, and that was a 1/4 cup of brown sugar, sorry. This is a 1/4 cup of apple cider vinegar. This is a teaspoon of cumin and a teaspoon of chili powder right there, just like that. Now we've also got to add a teaspoon of hot sauce. Who doesn't like hot sauce? Okay, so maybe it's a little bit more than a teaspoon. Just give it a couple of shakes. And a little bit of stone ground mustard, about a teaspoon of that. We're going to whip it all together. I didn't add salt and pepper to this right away because we're going to do that at the end. We want to make sure everything is nice and seasoned at the end. The tough part when you make a sauce like this is if you start putting too much salt in it now, you can never tell if it's too much to add later. All right, there we go, nice and mixed together. Looks great. Let's add it to our ground beef. So we're going to add a little bit of olive oil, just enough to coat the bottom of the pan. It's probably going to be about half a tablespoon or so. Make sure to get it nice and hot. You can tell when it's ready because you'll see little tiny wisps of smoke coming off the top. We'll give that a second. I can see the smoke already, so we're going to drop in our ground beef. Ah, the sound of sizzling. So what we've done here is we had our hot pan on our saute station or our burners, and we took our ground beef and put it in the hot pan with a little bit of olive oil, about a teaspoon or so of olive oil to make sure it's nice and hot. Our ground beef, again, just a reminder, is 1 pound. It's a half a pound of ground pork and a half a pound of ground chuck. We use both because pork tastes delicious. So we're going to kind of break it up in there a little bit as we saute, moving things around, getting things nice and coated. We don't want to have big pieces. Big pieces don't make great Sloppy Joe because then it's more like eating a cheeseburger with sauce all over it. So we're going to break it up a little bit. Now you can see how it's starting to brown up some. That's the time we want to add in our peppers and our onions that we diced up. So we're going to put that right in there, just like that. And we're going to let that saute until it's a little translucent. Mixing it all nice and in, just like that. Again, we're not going to season until the end because we're just not sure how everything is going to match together. You're gonna wanna put salt in, but hold off, don't do it. So we're gonna give it a nice stir. You can see the onions are becoming translucent and the peppers are getting cooked. We wanna make sure all the two beefs are nice and mixed together. We look good. So now we're gonna take our sauce. This is our barbecue sauce that we made, or our Sloppy Joe sauce, and just put that right in there, just like that. Now, once it's in, mix it around with everything, and you may need to add a touch of water to it. It's not gonna hurt it, because the water will evaporate off of it. It's called reduction. What happens is it's when the water turns to vapor and goes away. And this might need a touch of water, not much, so let's add a little bit. That was probably a tablespoon and a half. Mix it all in. Once this is nice and mixed together, we're going to let it simmer for about 10 minutes or so, uncovered on low heat. Very important. You don't want it rolling on high heat, because then you'll lose all your sauce. All right. Let's let that simmer and become a happy Sloppy Joe. All right, guys, I pulled our Sloppy Joe mix off the stovetop and brought it over here. We're going to test the seasoning on it a little bit, just to make sure. You don't want to feed food to people you haven't tasted yourself, right? That's all right. You could use a pinch of salt. So I'm going to take a pinch of our salt and put it in there. I'm going to give it a little sprinkle of black pepper. Mix it around a little bit here. A new spoon. Let's see where we are. That's good. Now, we're ready to plate. So we'll take a spoonful of it. Got a nice little simple hamburger bun here. We're going to add our Sloppy Joe to it. And don't be too worried about being sloppy. It is Sloppy Joe. Now you're ready for your friends to come over for Monday Night Football. I'm Chef Plum from Plum Love Foods. That's how you make Sloppy Joe from scratch.